But let's turn to a New York Post article that really is not surprising. It talks a lot about infidelity during coronavirus and seeing the surges of that. Asa, up in New York, when we think about affairs, we think about infidelity, does it really matter in New York for guys that are listening or watching right now? Does it matter to them if they can find information against their spouse on infidelity?
That's a great question, Scott. New York, like many states, is considered no fault, which means you don't have to show that somebody had an affair in order to get a divorce. But it's certainly taken into consideration for a lot of purposes. If there's issues of custody in a case, a judge is going to look at your behavior and make a decision about whether or not that should impact the time you're going to be able to have with your children. So you have to be very careful with those things and make good choices. Also, it can have a financial impact. Certainly if you're spending money on an extramarital affair, a judge can order that money come back in and have to be redistributed, repaid to the marital estate before it's distributed. And again, that's just more bad behavior that the court can consider for other purposes. Even if you're in a no-fault state, and it's not going to be the basis for a divorce, it's going to be considered for a lot of purposes, and you really do have to make good choices. And if you don't make good choices, you got to go talk to your attorney about it right away, because the earlier we know about these things, the more we can do to try to mitigate any damage that might happen.
Yeah, that's a good point, Asa. There was an article last week that talked about, the plethora of information that's out there. We have the shelter in place. Before this started, perhaps there was some infidelity going on, or perhaps their marriage was just completely destroyed. They were still not divorced. They were engaging in other relationships. Naturally, understood. But the point is that they're creating this enormous amount of potential evidence out there. So, Camille, should guys be thinking about talking to their attorney first before they start snooping around, trying to discover, misconduct by their wife?
Right, absolutely. I mean, there are some states, and New Mexico is not one of them, but there are some states where adultery or infidelity does matter. You want to at least consult with and potentially retain an attorney to discuss that. The reason that that's so important is that in some of these circumstances, we might speak to somebody who believes that they will become their own investigator. They will figure all this information out and it will be useful. And in some instances, it might be useful. The problem, though, is that in some states, things like key logging software or tracking devices can be illegal or might make the information inadmissible in court. So it's essential that if you are in this circumstance, that you talk to somebody about it before you go down that rabbit hole. Number one, it might not be important anyway for your case. But number two, if it is important, you want to make sure that that information is obtained in an appropriate way.